Yo, plane's ready. Yo, bro. What the
Bro, what in the Guadalupe is going on over here, bro?
9 days out of jail, Tekashi was already on camera in a dress, and he had Young Thug's name written all over it. The footage hit Instagram, ran through TikTok and X in hours, and cracked open a beef built on snitching allegations, identity theft, and years of unfinished business. This is the whole story. The Coachella moment and the 24 hours after. April 12, 2026, Indio, California. Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival, Weekend 1, Day 3. Young Thug hit the stage. He opened with Ski, cut Gunna's name out the hook, then brought out Ty Dolla $ign for Carnival, Nav for Trimsky, and dropped the night's biggest surprise, Camila Cabello for Havana. First time the two shared a stage in years. Northwest and Teyana Taylor were in the crowd. The reception was real, but none of the features were the headline. Young Thug walked out with rainbow-colored dreads, twists in blue, green, purple, yellow, and red. For a man who had just come through a RICO indictment, snitching allegations, leaked jail calls, and public ridicule, this set read like a return to sender. Color in his hair, guests on deck, crowd going crazy. One person watching didn't see a comeback. He saw a copy. 6ix9ine had walked out of a 3-month stint, supervised release violations tied to assault and drug charges, around April 3rd, 2026, 9 days out of a cell. No moves yet. He was watching Coachella like the rest of us. Within 24 hours of Thug's set, he was live on Instagram. Side-by-side comparisons. Thug's new rainbow dreads next to his own multicolored locks. The same look he's been rocking since 2017. For 6ix9ine, that hair is not a style. It's the last thing standing. The federal case? Gone. The industry relationships? Gone. The street credibility? Done. But the rainbow? That's still his, and nobody in hip-hop looks at multicolored hair without thinking of him first. That's the one asset nobody could seize. He captioned the comparisons. Guess who is trying to feel more like me? Rattin' wasn't enough. He needs to feel more like me, SMH. Stories followed. You Not Me gang. Bro thought this was tough. He looped in a Vlad TV clip where he talked about stealing styles, laying it out like Thug was the student and he never got credit for the lesson. Then he went further. On April 13th and 14th, 6ix9ine posted videos of himself in a long dress, set the whole thing up, mirrors, pink lighting, vanity setup. The target was clear, the Jeffrey album cover, Thug's 2016. Project where he rocked a feminine garment on the cover and the fashion world ran with it. Voiceover. Since Young Thug trying to jack the rainbow in his hair like him, he finna wear a dress like Thug. He posed, adjusted the fit, turned the whole moment into a reflection of exactly what he was accusing Thug of doing. The footage spread across Instagram Reels, TikTok, and X on April 13th and 14th. Hundreds of thousands of views in hours. Academics TV, Say Cheese TV, the big accounts ran with it. Hashtags, number 6ix9ine, Young Thug, Vibra Coachella, took over timelines with rainbow emojis, rat symbols, and laughing crying faces. That's the footage. That's what went viral. And real talk, the way 6ix9ine structured that campaign wasn't random. This wasn't just posting one clip and bouncing. He moved in stages. First the side-by-sides to plant the copycat frame, then the stories to keep it cycling through feeds, then the Vlad TV clip to put receipts behind the accusation, then the dress, the escalation that flipped the whole thing from a hairstyle argument to something every major rap commentary account had to pick up and run with. By the time that dress footage dropped, the audience was already primed. 6ix9ine had spent the previous 24 hours building the setup, and the dress was the punchline the whole thing was pointing toward. A man who spent 3 months in a cell had clearly been thinking about exactly this. And Thug, as of April 14th, nothing. No post, no story, no repost, no comment. Dead silence from a man who had just been on one of the biggest stages of the year. That silence hit different. Either Thug was above it, below it, or loading something. And depending on which one you believed, the conversation looked completely different. But none of those conversations mean anything without the history underneath them. In order to understand why a hairstyle at Coachella was enough to kick all of this off, why those rainbow dreads weren't just a fashion choice, but a lit match sitting next to dry wood, we need to take a look at where this beef actually started and the one word that's been sitting at the center of it since 2018. Who gets to call who a rat? In hip-hop, the word snitch doesn't just sting, it metastasizes. It doesn't stay in one place. It attaches itself to every song you drop, every feature you call in, every handshake you attempt in the industry. It audits your whole catalog retroactively and asks the crowd to reconsider everything they thought they knew about you. It is the most permanent verdict a rapper can receive, not because it ends the music, but because it rewrites what the music meant. And that word, that verdict, is the bedrock of everything happening between 6ix9ine and Young Thug. Daniel Hernandez, Tekashi 6ix9ine, caught a federal racketeering case in 2018 tied to the 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods. Staring down serious time, he made a choice that turned his name into a case study. He testified against his former associates in open federal court, handing investigators a detailed breakdown of gang activity, crimes, and the people in his circle in exchange for a sentence cut. No ambiguity, no gray area. The man sat in a federal courtroom and cooperated. It was documented, public, and permanent. In an industry where loyalty is the currency every artist claims to spend, 6ix9ine became the face of counterfeiting it. He got out, rebuilt his persona on chaos and internet shock value, and leaned into the label because he figured fighting it was a war he'd already lost, and pretending it didn't happen wasn't an option either. So he flipped the script. He dared the industry to tell him he was wrong while they stood on stages rapping about loyalty they couldn't demonstrate when it actually cost something. For years, that's where the thing sat. 6ix9ine trolling, the industry largely ignoring him. The snitch conversation filed away as a closed case. Then 2025 hit, and a leaked police interrogation audio resurfaced with a name attached that nobody in Atlanta was ready to hear: Young Thug. The audio allegedly had Jeffrey Williams, Young Thug, naming associates, including Pee Wee Roscoe, during questioning connected to an old Lil Wayne tour bus shooting case. The detail that spread the fastest: Thug had allegedly sat with investigators voluntarily for approximately 2 hours. No attorney present, talking through people and events in his circle. For a man whose entire YSL RICO case was built on the mythology of crew loyalty, that detail hit like a wrecking ball. Thug pushed back. He denied full cooperation, framed it as trying to look out for someone he cared about, and put out a statement that read, "To everyone involved, I'm sorry this is happening. I'm moving forward." The culture was not moving forward. Rat memes flooded social media. Leaked jail calls surfaced. Thug on the phone, criticizing peers. Infidelity admissions woven through the commentary. The nearly silent on Thug. The hypocrisy was sitting right there in the open. Whack 100, manager, industry voice, never short of an opinion, stepped in with his read on the year before. The music. Music is where rap beefs stop being beef and start being permanent records. An Instagram post gets buried, a diss track gets cataloged in your discography, attached to your name. played in interviews, streamed in the background of every conversation anyone tries to have about you for the next decade. You can't unsay a song. 6ix9ine understood this the way someone understands gravity, because he spent his entire post-prison existence fighting for relevance in an industry that decided it was done with him. Social media clowning he's got in limitless supply. What he's been chasing is the thing that sticks. And in 2025, he started laying bricks. The first sign was a snippet. 6ix9ine previewed a track built on a flip of the Itsy Bitsy Spider, turning the children's melody into a snitching indictment aimed directly at Thug. The bars, "Seen a snake turn spider turn rat, don't tell the world, just please let me out, man, watch at." The nursery rhyme wrapper around the accusation was no accident. It was contemptuous. The musical equivalent of doing something serious in slow motion just to make it sting harder. He was making a song you could hum along to out of the allegation that Thug told on his people. Then came Facts. The title alone was strategy. Call it facts and everything inside it becomes an uncontested truth before anyone presses play. The bars matched that energy with zero interest in subtlety. Thought you was a thug. I done seen a snake turn rat. You a rat. No metaphor, no coded language, a direct statement on a record, time-stamped with his name on it. The kind of thing that exists in Google search results forever. And the real move those tracks made wasn't just noise, it was documentation. By the time Coachella weekend came, 6ix9ine needed to position his trolling as something principled rather than opportunistic. The timestamps already existed in the music. He wasn't just reacting to rainbow dreads with the energy of a petty impulse. He had been saying this on record, in songs, for months before that stage was even assembled. He also widened the target well beyond Thug. He came at the F the Streets movement, the concept that emerged post-YSL RICO, as a framework for the industry to resume working with artists who took plea deals, calling it a manufactured loophole built to rehabilitate the images of men who cooperated without asking those men to actually own what they did. His framing, they realized that Gunna doesn't need them. It's like a loophole. We gotta create a movement where we can confuse the fans. Whether that read is accurate or not, as a trolling strategy, it was cold-blooded. It painted the entire post-RICO image rehabilitation happening in Atlanta rap as a group project, coordinated theater designed to confuse the audience about what the street code actually demanded, so the men who had violated it could continue to profit from invoking it. And it put 6ix9ine, of all people, in the position of the only voice in the room calling the game exactly as he saw it. Then there was Woody. 6ix9ine brought up the loyalty question that cut the closest to the bone.
From what I see, scared of Woody, cause I see him being in the hood. I see Woody still in the trenches of Atlanta.
The implication in those words was specific, and it was cutting. That Thug didn't cover Woody's legal costs out of fear, not negligence. That the man who would later walk a Coachella stage wrapped in rainbow dreads and perform anthems about the streets had quietly stepped back from someone still living them because he calculated the risk and didn't like the number. That's the architecture 6ix9ine built across 2025 and into early 2026. Diss track bricks, social media cement, personal accusations stacked layer by layer, until the structure was tall enough that all he needed was one public moment to point at. Young Thug's Coachella set handed him that moment on a plate, but the Instagram posts and diss tracks, as deliberate as they were, only tell part of the story, the part that really detonated, the dress, crossed into territory that went beyond music and commentary into something more surgical. In order to understand why that specific choice of weapon cut the deepest, we need to take a look at what fashion actually means to each of these men and why walking into a glam setup in a long dress was a far more calculated move than it looked on the surface. The dress. In hip-hop, fashion is never just fashion. It is an argument. It is the opening statement you make before anyone in the crowd has heard a single bar. The thing that tells the room who you are, what you claim, and what you refuse to back down from. It is power communicated through fabric, color, and silhouette. And for both 6ix9ine and Young Thug, fashion has always been one of the primary vehicles for broadcasting who they are to the world, which is precisely why the dress footage was not petty theater. It was a surgically targeted hit aimed at the deepest layer of both men's identities at the same time. 6ix9ine's whole look, the rainbow hair, the dense field of face tattoos, the deliberately maximalist, saturated aesthetic he unleashed in 2017, functions as a fortress. He built himself to be undeniable, unhideable, impossible to scroll past. And for someone who has had virtually every other pillar of hip-hop credibility knocked out from under him, the industry cosigns, the street validation, the reputational standing, the rainbow hair is the last wall still standing. It is his identity in its most irreducible visual form. His cooperation destroyed relationships. His prison stints slowed his momentum. His trolling persona burnt bridges across the industry. But the look, nobody touched the look. The rainbow still belonged to him. And in hip-hop, you can lose everything except the thing that makes people recognize you from across the room. So when Thug pulled up to Coachella with multicolored dreads running blue, green, purple, yellow, red, in 6ix9ine's reading, that was not a coincidence of aesthetic taste. That was a man who had just navigated his own public snitching scandal, reaching for the visual energy of unapologetic spectacle 6ix9ine had spent years building from scratch. Maybe that argument is a stretch. Thug has played with color his whole career. But 6ix9ine didn't need the argument to hold up in court. He needed it to dominate the Coachella news cycle and pull the spotlight back onto a battlefield where he was already warmed up. So he built the side-by-sides. He dropped the captions. He surfaced the Vlad TV clip. He stacked the copycat frame into the audience's mind carefully, methodically. And then, before the first wave of reaction had even fully crested, he escalated to something nobody had expected: the dress. The footage from April dress footage and rainbow hair side by sides, running in overlapping waves across Reels, TikTok, and X, with distribution accounts amplifying the reach past anything 6ix9ine's own following could have generated alone. By April 14th, the footage had taken on a life completely separate from the beef that produced it. A self-contained viral moment with enough layers of pettiness, irony, physical comedy, and industry subtext to hold the attention of audiences that had no prior stake in either man's career. And Young Thug still had not said a single word publicly. That silence was working in the background of every conversation the footage was generating, and the internet had divided, competing, loudly expressed opinions about what it meant. To understand the full picture of where this thing stands and where it could go, we need to take a look at how the public actually received the footage and why the reaction itself tells you something real about where the culture is right now. The reaction. When footage like this drops, the first thing the numbers tell you is whether it actually landed or just made noise. And the velocity here was the kind that tells you it landed. Within hours of the clips going up on April 13th and 14th, the footage was pulling hundreds of thousands of views across Instagram Reels, TikTok, and X combined. Academics TV, Say Cheese TV, the heavyweights in the rap commentary distribution game, picked it up early and gave it the legs to escape 6ix9ine's platform and reach people who had no prior interest in the beef. On X, clips framed as 6ix9ine calls out Young Thug for copying his rainbow hairstyle were hitting thousands of views in tight windows and kept climbing. Rainbow emojis, rat symbols, laughing, crying faces stacking up in comment threads. The hashtag combinations ran, but here's where it gets real. The reaction didn't land in one place. It split hard, right down the middle. And that split tells you more than the footage itself. One side of the internet crowned 6ix9ine no questions, asked Petty King, entertainment gold, unbothered and untouchable. Comments ran, 6ix9ine never misses, unmatched level, and the one that actually meant something. This might be the first post by him I ever liked. Think about that last one. That's not his base talking. That's people who normally dismiss him completely getting pulled in by the specific, precise execution of the trolling. Memes detonated in parallel. Edits of Thug as a 6ix9ine clone. Copycat gags tying the hair back to the snitching allegations. Side-by-side timelines of both men's looks running all the way back through the years. For this whole camp, 6ix9ine had done exactly the thing only he does when he's running at full tilt. Walked into the most available moment and took it with a speed and willingness to embarrass himself that the industry's more calculated inhabitants simply cannot match. The other side came back just as loud, and they weren't wrong either. In these corners, the footage was tired, obsessed, a man with nothing else to offer the conversation burning post-prison energy on a clout chase. Young Thug's people pointed out, with actual factual grounding, that rainbow and multicolored dreads are not something 6ix9ine invented, that Thug has played with color in his hair and his whole fashion identity for the entirety of his career, and that claiming ownership of a hairstyle that predates your career by decades is the kind of reach that only registers if the audience was already looking to score a point against the target. Dread's been a thing. Thug looked better anyway. Those threads had plenty of traction. The snitching debate cracked back open across both camps simultaneously, and that's where the conversation got genuinely sharp. The irony at the center of all of this is almost too layered to process cleanly. The man who is by every available measure the definitive documented example of federal cooperation in modern hip-hop was now the loudest, most relentless voice demanding accountability for someone else's alleged cooperation. While calling out an industry that had buried him for doing the same thing, it was now quietly excusing in someone else. The phrase, "the irony of 6ix9ine calling anyone a rat," ran through comment sections like a current. For everyone who landed here, the trolling was disqualifying before it started. You don't get to swing that label once you've become its most cited example. But the counter-argument had legs too, and real ones. The argument that 6ix9ine was exposing genuine industry hypocrisy, that the rat label gets applied based on who you are and who your friends are, not on the actual documented facts of what you did, wasn't a fringe take. It was a structurally sound critique of how the street code operates inconsistently across the culture, and it resonated deeply with a significant portion of the audience that had watched the industry handle the post-Rico Atlanta fallout with a flexibility it had never once extended to 6ix9ine. Celebrities kept their distance. Lil Baby, Future, 21 Savage, the exact names 6ix9ine had tagged and called out publicly in earlier rounds, said nothing. No cosigns, no pushback, no engagement in any direction. Just the kind of measured silence you maintain when there's no clean way out of a room. For 6ix9ine, that silence was the loudest validation he could have asked for. If the rebuttal existed, someone would have said it. The quiet told the whole story. And then there was Thug himself, still completely silent as of April 14th, 2026. No post, no clip, no response of any kind. That silence is doing work in multiple directions at once. It could be strategy, starving the trolling of the engagement it needs to stay alive, knowing that any response amplifies the platform 6ix9ine runs on. It could be legal discipline. With the YSL Rico case still in the air, every public statement carries courtroom risk that a hairstyle argument does not. Or it could be something loading in the background. Thug's DBC album had been teased, and signals around tour activity had been surfacing. If a response is coming, it's coming on a first single, with the full weight of a new project behind it, and it will make every Instagram reel from Coachella weekend look like a footnote. That's the tension this footage leaves wide open. 6ix9ine came out of jail and fired within 9 days. No warm-up, No pause, straight to maximum pressure. Thug walked off a Coachella stage with rainbow dreads and said absolutely nothing. Two men, same word hanging over both their heads. Rat, working it from completely opposite directions. One using noise as the weapon, one using space, and the whole internet split straight down the middle, watching to see which approach actually carries weight when the dust settles. The footage went viral because it had everything the internet was designed to amplify. A cell phone dressed up as an attack, a fashion war standing in for something far older and more serious, and a beef with enough history that every new chapter adds a layer instead of restarting the clock. Whatever Young Thug does next, if he does anything, the next chapter of this is already being written. Yo, if you enjoyed this video, click on any of the cards on your screen.